All right, so here's the second part of Unit 1. So it says a college student is choosing between two data plans for her new cell phone. Both plans include an allowance of 2 gigabytes of data per month. The monthly cost of each option can be seen as these different functions. So in each function, the input X represents the gigabytes of data used over the monthly allowance. The student decides to find the values of A of 1 and B of 1 and compare them. What are those values? So if we ever have this is saying that take 1 and plug it into our equation. Okay, where we're going to substitute it in is anywhere that we see an X. So in this first equation, we have A of X equals 60. There's no X on this right-hand side. So we're going to say that A of 1 is equal to 60. On B, if we plug in 1 into this equation, we're going to get 10 times 1 plus 25. And if we type that into our calculator, we should get 35. All right, so which one would be larger? A of 1 is bigger. Okay. After looking at some of her past phone bills, she decides to compare 7.5 and B of 7.5. What are those values? So again, same concept. We're going to take 7.5 and we're going to plug it in for any X. On A of 7.5, that's still going to give us 60 because this is just a constant. There's no X value. Okay, so this means that no matter what or how many gigabytes she uses, it's just going to cost her $60 anyways. For B, we're going to plug in 7.5 into our equation. And when we do that, that's going to give us 32.5. Okay, so again, you would type that into your calculator. So 10 times 7.5 plus 25. So sorry, that's 100. JK. I knew that felt wrong. So that's 100. So B of 7.5 is larger. Okay. For the next one, it says describe each data plan in words. So option A, this is $60 no matter what amount of gigabytes you use. So no matter how many gigs, it'll cost $60. And that's for option A. For option B, it's got a standard amount of $25. So it's going to cost you $25 depending, no matter if you spend any gigabytes or not, plus $10 for every gig. Okay. And now we're going to graph these. So for option A, it's a constant. So it's going to be a line that goes straight across. So for $60, it's going to go straight across. For option B, we have a y-intercept at 25. So we're going to go up to 25. And then we're going to go up 10 and then over 1. Up 10, over 1. Up 10, over 1. Up 10, over 1. Up 10, over 1. We're going to connect that. Notice how both of these are linear equations. This one's a constant. This one actually has that y equals mx plus b form. Okay, take a moment, try this one. Make sure that you're reading and paying attention to what the actual question is asking you for. So go ahead and pause and try. All right, so let's go ahead and try this one. So it says the cell phone company from company W costs $15 per month plus $20 per gigabyte. Rule W gives the monthly cost in dollars of using gigabytes. So we know that it costs $20 per gig, but it's $15 per month. So we're saying plus 15. You should have gotten C. Now, if you put A, then you weren't paying attention to the fact that it says G is gigabytes. So that's our X value. And how much does it cost per gig? $20. So that's why it's 20X and not 15X. Okay. Okay, go ahead and take a moment, look this one over and see if you can get it. Okay, the college student who is looking for a data plan for her cell phone found a third option, which also offers a 2 gig monthly allowance for data. The monthly cost of this option can be represented by this equation, where X is the gigabytes of data used over the monthly allowance. So find 0.7 and explain what it means in a situation. So if I take 0.7 and I plug it into this equation, and I type this into my calculator, that's going to give me 26. Okay, so what this means is if I go over 2 gigs, because that's my monthly allowance, by 0.7, it'll cost $26. Now her budget is still $50 a month. To find how many gigabytes of data she can use, she chooses this plan. She writes C of x equals 50 and then solves for x. What value of x makes this equation true? So she's going to take this equation and set it equal to 50. So we're going to take 30x plus 5, set it equal to 50. Now when I'm solving, I'm going to do reverse PEMDAS. Oh, I can't write it up. There we go. Reverse PEMDAS. So what I mean by that is we're going to add, subtract first. So we're going to subtract 5 from both sides. And that's going to give us 30x equals 45. Next, I'm going to multiply, divide. So I'm going to divide by 30. So 45 divided by 30. I'm going to type that in. And that's going to give me x equals 1.5. So 1.5 gigs is going to give us a cost of $50. So she can only spend 1.5 gigs. All right, so on to the next page. So 2 functions are defined by this. Select all the statements that are true about the function. So we got 2 different types of functions. We got f, we got g. So when it says f of 3, we're going to take 3 and we're going to plug it into f for our x value. So we're going to say 5 minus 0.2 times 3. And we're going to type that into our calculator. And that's going to give us 4.4. Now, 4.4 bigger than 0, because that's what this is saying. Yes, that's true. So we're going to circle it. Now, f of 3 is 4.4. We just found that up here. Is that bigger than 5? No. G of -1. So now we're going to use this function. And change the color. And we're going to plug in -1. So 0.2 times -1 plus 5. Now, if we type that into our calculator, I'm going to get 0.8. Is that what this is saying? Yes. G of -1, that's 0.8. We just found that on the last one. Is that less than f of -1? So remember, f is that first equation. So we're going to take -1 and we're going to plug it in to our equation. Type it into our calculator. And that's going to give us 5.2. Is 5.2 bigger than 0.8? Yes. F of 0. We're going to plug in to our equation. That's going to give me 5 minus 0.2 times 0. That's going to give me 5. And g of 0, so 0.2 times 0 plus 5. That's going to give me 1. Is 1 equal to 5? The answer is no, so E is not correct. So this is using that function notation. Okay, so we're going to talk more about input and output. Input is our domain values. That's our t or our x. Output is what is produced by after what we plugged in. Okay. So we're going to skip over this one. All right. On this one, it says the set of all possible input values of a function are the domain. We just talked about that. These are your x values. Okay. So a 350-gallon tank full of water is draining at a rate of 25 gallons per minute. Here's the equation. Okay. So here is a graph. What are possible inputs? Inputs are our x values. So looking at our graph, what are possible input values? Anything that's on the x-axis. Anything that's on the x-axis. So from 0 to 14. So 0 all the way to 14. Impossible inputs would be negative numbers, because we can't have negative gallons, right? I'm sorry. negative minutes. So this is minutes on the x-axis. This is number of gallons. Okay. We can't have negative. Now we can't have anything that's past 14 because that's when the water drains out. So water is draining all the way down to 0. So the domain would be from 0 to 14. All right, here's a different problem. We've got Celsius, which is temperature, and temperature in Kelvin. So here is my equation. Here's the graph, where C is the temperature in Celsius and K of C is the temperature in Kelvin. What are the possible inputs? Looking at this, we've got arrows on the end, okay? Now realistically, you can only get so hot before you really can't measure it and so cold before you can't measure it. But theoretically, it could get as hot as cold as you would want it to. So this will be negative infinity to positive infinity. Impossible inputs, there really is none. The domain of this function is negative infinity to positive infinity. Again, there could be like a restriction. Obviously, we can't measure temperatures of things that are too hot for us to get close to, but we can kind of guesstimate. All right, on the next one, this one's a little tricky. Now, notice how this is not a straight line. It's just got some dots. So a tennis camp charges $40 per student for a full day camp. Camp runs only if at least 5 students sign up. So we got to have at least 5 students. And it limits the enrollment to 16 campers a day. Okay, so we at least are going to have 5, okay? And we can't have half a kid, so they got to be whole numbers, right? And we can go all the way up to 16. They got to be whole numbers, though. They can't be a partial kid. Impossible inputs is anything below 5, because we have to have at least 5 campers, okay? And then anything above 16. Because they said that you can only have up to 16 people. So the domain of this is going to be from 5 to 16, where they're all whole numbers. Okay, and this is just a fancy way of saying of the values of whole numbers. All right, outputs. Here is that tank thing again. Okay, and this says name 3 possible input-output pairs. So that means name 3 values or 3 coordinates. So for instance, this point right here would be 8, 150. This point right here would be 13, 25. And you could pick 3 various ones. There's more than one answer on this. 5, 225. Okay, earlier we described the set of all possible input values as being 0 to 14. How would you describe the set of all possible output values? So output would be my range. Well, we're going to look at the lowest and the highest values. The lowest would be 0, and the highest would be 350. And that's because we started with 350 in the tank, and then we go all the way until it's completely empty. Now, back to the question on number of campers. Is 20 a possible output value in this situation? Can we have 20 for a possible output? Well, if we plug in any number in here, can we get 20 as a possible output? Nope. If I plug in 1 into this equation, I'm going to get 40. If I plug in 2, I'm going to get 80. So I cannot have 20 come up. What about 100? Well, if I plug in 3, that's going to give me 120. So the answer is no for both of these. Okay, and the reason why is because we can't substitute into this equation and make that happen. Okay, here are the 2 graphs that relate to the number of students in camp revenue in dollars. Explain why graph A could not represent the function. So why does graph A not represent the function? Well, remember, it's not continuous. You got to have a whole number for the kid. You can't have a decimal, which would be the numbers that are in between 4 and 5 or 5 and 6, etc. So can't have decimals. Okay, what's the range of function R? What's the range of function R? Okay, so function R is right here. So it's defined by R equals 40 times N, where N is the number of campers. Okay, now if we're talking about this restriction of 5 to 16, if we plug in 5 into this situation, we get 200. If we plug in 16 into this situation, we're going to get 640. So that's our lowest to our highest Y values, our outputs. Okay. Okay, go ahead and take a moment and try this problem. All right, so small bus charges $3.50 per person for a ride from the train station to a concert. The bus will run if at least 3 people take it and cannot fit more than 10 people. Function B gives the amount of money that the bus operator earns when N people ride the bus. Identify all the numbers that make sense as inputs, domains, and output range for this function, and then sketch the graph. So they charge $3.50 per people to ride, per person. It can't have less than 3 and more than 10. So we're going to have from 3 to 10 for our inputs. So 3, 4, all the way to 10, but they got to be whole numbers. Now it's going to cost $3.50 per person. So if I had 3 people, that's going to be $10.50 for 3 people. If I had 4 people, that's going to be $14. If I have 5 people, that's 17. 6 people, 21. 7 people. So it is in my head instead of typing into a calculator, but it's fine. So it'll give me 28. And then 10. Okay. I'm not going to connect these. Okay. My output is going to be 10 to 35. Okay. And it says identify all, so you would list all of these different numbers out. Okay. Now here's the graph of B. Okay. So now what you're going to do is you're going to work on your review guide because we're finished with Unit 1. So if you flip in your packet to the next page. Yep, next page. I would go ahead and pause the video and kind of start working through those problems. I am going to post the answer key for this. And then if you have any specific questions, you can come to me either today during the Zoom, or you can come to me on Thursday for in person. So make sure that you go ahead and try this on your own and then check the answer key that will be posted very shortly. Okay.